Go gallery view, I guess. It's totally like really actually easy to do it on Zoom, seemingly. Redirecting to YouTube. I think we are should theoretically be I think we're live. So
all right.
Yeah. Tweet it so that anyone in the planet actually knows this is happening. But we are actually live right now, technically, and there's a huge delay, you'll notice.
I'm not going to watch it on the side.
No.
I don't want to get tripped up by the delay here. I'm not good enough with technology.
No, I think I have to have it opened.
Okay.
But anyone who watches the re-record will get to listen to us talk about this. Since we are presently live.
So wife and kids out of the house?
Yeah, well, the kids are here, but they're asleep. So that could end badly at any moment.
That's why I've managed to stay childless all these years.
Yeah, and because you're a hell of a lot younger than me.
Contributes. Although all my friends now having kids, so.
It's that time.
It's that time.
About that age. All right, I just
Luckily,
tweeted it.
I have an older sister, so she gets the pressure, not me.
That's good. You don't want to be first. All right, we are. I just tweeted out the link, so if you want to retweet it. Wonder if anyone's already watching. That'd be very exciting. We have 4 people watching. Adam Charlowski first. Should we link him in? Adam, you're welcome to join if you want, buddy.
So what's going on, man?
Just watching the soap opera that is American politics and
the unraveling of America right now.
It's pretty crazy how many of them seem to have gotten it, and kind of dispels the whole like anything outdoors is safe.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, man. I saw you post or you talking about how your first reaction was that it was like a political play. And I have to admit, I kind of like my gut at the very beginning was a similar reaction. And it's sad that I think that, or that we think that, because it's like, it's a sign of where politics has gone in America, that, those kind of things are within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I think I said that exact thing to you. I was like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I don't buy into any of that, but like, you can't help anything in politics. This is not Trump specific or anything, but you can't help just like be suspicious of any story that you hear, think it's a tactic, that it's political in some way.
No, absolutely.
It's crazy.
I mean, it feels like it's global. Like politics has gotten more and more polarizing over time, I think. And you have, these different movements but I do think that like looking back at history, you just find all of this happens in cycles. And when you have societies that, I always come back to economics around this stuff, and it's just a tried and true thing that when you see inequality rising, the Cantelon Effect, like we talked about that. I, had that tweet about it last week. That kind of thing is like a tried and true way to lead to the destruction of a lot of societal systems. Like you just have inequality that breaks out and leads to a lot of bad things happening. I mean, nationalist movements rise because of inequality, right? Like people feel like they're being left behind in society, and I totally get it. But it's so driven by these decisions at the top and by leadership, right? It's just it's really sad.
But interestingly, they're the ones who end up with the people and the pitchforks at their doors, right? So it's kind of a catch-22. Maybe not even the leaders, but in this like society now, you would think it would be like the billionaires and the super wealthy who would be trying to work very hard to avoid seeing something like that happen. Jeff Booth actually talked about that in my podcast with him. He was saying, all this inflation, money printing, blah, blah, blah. It should be the richest people who are trying to stop it because, as you said, this only ends one way historically.
Yeah. Right. He's incredible, man. He's super sharp. His book, I can't recommend highly enough. I thought it was fantastic. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or listen to it yet, but he just thinks differently. And whether or not you agree with his principles, I think this about everything. I mean, you you should read everything, whether or not you agree with it. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, there are things I don't agree with about both sides, and I've read The Deficit Myth because I wanted to understand what the hell people were talking about on, you know, on that side of the aisle or of the equation. I've read The Price of Tomorrow for the same reason. I want to understand it. And his writing is just really lucid and interesting. I thought I don't know if you saw Russ Okung tweeted out the quote from Chamath saying Bitcoin was like a bet against the ruling class. I love that. I thought that was such a well put phrase there.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Man, I'm trying so hard to get Russ onto the show, and I'm like chasing around, but it's the middle of the football season. He's like perpetually injured,
middle of the
and
football.
they're dealing with the end of the football season. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that either. I'm doing so well in fantasy football. It's killing me.
Me too.
For my own personal. How come every person I talk to is like 3-0 in all their leagues? But
well, everyone says that, right?
What's up with that?
Everyone says that. Everyone's 3-0 in their own mind. My everyone in my fantasy league gives me crap because I somehow always face a team that has a horrible week and win. So like my
good
points
defense.
Against, it's just good. It's good defense wins championships. So Russ would be awesome on your show, man. He's incredible. I mean, he's been a great voice for mainstream adoption too, and also just like, you know, speaking to different communities the way he does about what wealth creation, generational wealth. I just think it's fantastic what he's doing.
You just mentioned Chamath. So like so Sahil and I always talk about shooting your shot, right? In life with people, he's got a lot of stories that he can share about doing that. But you basically just did it again, right? With Chamath.
Yeah, yesterday, man. I've been trying to get a hold of him for a while. You know this, but like back to the genesis of my entire Twitter life and like being a Twitter person or FinTwit or whatever it is you and Chamath. Like you guys were the first two people to retweet my Mr. Federico post from back in May when I started posting these threads. And ever since then, I've been like, he lives in Palo Alto right near me. Like, I've been trying to get a hold of him, and he's impossible to get a hold of. I mean, he's like a billionaire, public figure, all this stuff. But I tweeted out yesterday just like soliciting ideas on topics for different threads I could do. And a bunch of people kept saying SPAC, you got to do SPAC 101, whatever. And so I tweeted at Chamath saying, hey, contact me. We should partner up and do a SPAC 101 because I know he likes education. The guy's doing a SPAC a day basically right now. And he slid into my DMs. So now we have we got a lunch meeting in a couple of weeks to connect on the stuff.
But you have basically you did the exact same thing with Mark Cuban. Well, actually,
you emailed. That was email. Yeah, that was email. But it's a tried and true method right now, man. I don't know. I think I've just been getting lucky. I don't tell you about all the ones that fail, so it's a selection bias thing. I could be like
secretly you're blasting a group to every blue check, and
I'll be totally honest about it. I mean, I've thrown out a whole lot of shots and more fail than not. But the upside, right? It's like a risk reward trade off. Like, what's the downside if someone doesn't see it or doesn't respond? I mean, that's it. Like, I've emailed Chamath at his email address probably 5 times and he's never responded. And now that he gave me his email address, it's like tagged in there. And so now we're connecting. But if he went back and like searched my email address in his inbox, he would find a bunch of emails where I tried to just cold email him to get together.
So I mean, what does SPAC 101 look like?
It's gonna be fun, man.
Maybe you can give the preliminary.
Yeah, I mean, I need to spend more time on it just to make sure that we're doing justice to like the broader atmosphere around it as well. But at the core of it, it's just some innovation around how you can get access to the public markets with a company. It gets criticized because of the unique economics that the sponsor, which is like the person that forms the SPAC, is getting in terms of fees. And they call it a promote, but it's basically you just get equity in the entity in return for the work you did to put it together. But it gets criticized for that because it tends to be quite rich and generous. And so all of these like private equity funds and hedge fund managers like Bill Ackman that are starting these things, it's like another way for people to jump on them for like, hey, you're grabbing a bunch of money, that you didn't really earn or deserve. But at the heart of it, it's a really unique way to access the public markets. And, we've seen the frenzy around it now, which, as with all frenzies, is overblown, right? At the end of the day, I'm a fundamentals guy. So I think things need to be grounded in fundamentals, but it's, it's pretty unique. And obviously, Chamath is doing it with some pretty cool companies. The Open Door one that he just announced is a really cool business.
So you also touched on the Cantelon Effect. Can you talk about that? Because it's so hyper relevant right now. Most people, I don't think, are aware of what it is or what it means.
That's been an interesting thing because, throughout this entire period during, COVID and the disruption and all of the stimulus and the quote unquote money printing from different governments. I mean, central banks globally, the Fed gets a lot here, but really everywhere. People have been talking about how the market is just going nuts and unemployment is still massive. People are really suffering and just creating this massive inequality in society. I mean, if you look, the Gini coefficient, which is supposed to measure inequality in a society, has just been pretty much steadily rising, like with the Fed's balance sheet. Someone posted a good graph, just like showing the two lines just going up and to the right, which is horrible. Yeah, seriously, it's like, I mean, it's horrible, and you can't, correlation is not causation. I get it, but the Cantelon effect is just this idea that basically money, when money is created, the people closest to the money benefit most, which like totally makes sense, right? And it was originally, it was like the people closest to the king. That was the whole idea. Like the money creation activity was at the king's level. And so anyone that was close to the king, you had access to the money first and could benefit from it before it trickled down through society and benefited anyone else. So like, I give you $100, you're able to go spend it. That doesn't benefit the people that you've kind of spent it down along to until they actually get access to the money. But before the inflation happens, you have the $100. And so prices haven't risen and you're getting access to a lot more, incremental spending, wealth, investment, whatever it might be. And it's kind of what, it's what a lot of people are pointing to today of what's happening, right? Is like you have this massive wealth effect. The top 1% is generating, an incredible amount of wealth while the rest of the economy and people, the real economy are, quite really suffering.
So you're saying the trickle down economics don't work?
I think that's one that's probably pretty tried and true, proven at this point. I don't know. It's tough, and it's one that like a lot of people on both sides of the aisle kind of agree on now, that it just the level of inequality that all of this is creating. I mean, we've seen Republicans getting behind all the stimulus, right? They're squabbling now over the amount of stimulus that needs to go in, but John Malden is a guy that I'm a huge follower of and a huge fan of. I highly recommend reading his work. He does a weekly newsletter called Thoughts from the Frontline. And he's kind of like an Austrian economist, really. And he's advocating for more stimulus. And he said, like, I can't believe I'm advocating for this, but we need it. Like, we're in a horrible spot as an economy. And as soon as we pull the plug on this because we think everything's fine, it's going to be a lot of trouble. So, when you have people like him, he's pretty fundamental around his beliefs around the debt load in the economy and all of that. When you have people like that saying, hey, we really need more, that's just a sign to me that things are not as they seem. We're in a little bit of the twilight zone.
Well, you see this like 180. It's the same people who most likely because their politics their political bias is stronger than their economic bias. But the very same people who said stimulus was bad in 2008 are pushing stimulus in 2020.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this whole period has been a great test case and for the MMT UBI team, right, around what's going to happen if they continue to push it over the next 4 or 6 years. I mean, it depends a lot on what happens with the election, I think, where the winds blow on it. But I mean, I think it would be hard to deny that we're in a tough spot from an economy standpoint for the next, 12 to 18 months. A lot of these jobs just aren't coming back right away.
I thought the economy had recovered. The stock market's at all-time highs, right?
The light switch. Yeah, the light switch. It was like the economy as a light switch thing that everyone was saying back in, I don't know, the years blown by, but I guess back in April, maybe, when they were talking about reopening, like everything was just going to come back to earth. But now you see, I mean, like, look at all these hospitality sector jobs that just now they're announcing cuts. You see like Disney parks announcing all the cuts in California because California has been so slow to reopen. You've got all the airlines announcing massive job cuts or pay cuts,
Furloughs,
hidden unemployment. I just continue to think, like, you know, that we report out the U3 unemployment number, but the U6 number, which captures people that, you know, are underemployed. It's just that seems like a much better measure to me. I need to do a thread on that, actually, explaining the differences in the unemployment measures, because it actually is important. But yeah, we're in a tough spot. It's and it continues to be the case that, again, the ruling class and the people in Washington, and, you know, they're sitting around squabbling and trying to get their political points for the future while real people suffer. And that's just a shame.
They also have no downside risk because they have the golden parachute and the you know, the big fat pillow sitting below them for if they fall. I mean, and
cushy jobs when they leave Washington, man. It is
cushy jobs when they leave Washington, and knowing that wherever they go is going to get bailed out.
Yeah.
Like the Cantelon Effect. I mean, the printed money is going directly to the richest people, not the poorest, as you said. So you have this situation where, you know, if you're rich, you know that you'll be taken care of. Right?
Yeah. I mean, like, everything in Washington now, I don't, either side of the aisle, whatever you are, like, it's just what Washington and the way this like career politician thing has developed in our country is just one of the worst things for progress of really anything that we're trying to push forward on as a society. It's just, you know, like when you have people tied to the whole title of politician and they're going to go serve for 30 or 40 years, you're going to become beholden to a bunch of special interests, a bunch of money. You know, you have the revolving door money on the back end that's, you know, going to come out. You leave Washington and you're making 7 figures doing whatever it is, you know, consulting, whatever that means, you know, basically connecting people. It's crazy that's where it's come to. It wasn't what the founding fathers thought. It's the whole idea of public service was you leave industry for 2 years or 4 years, whatever it is, and you go serve your country, and then you go back to industry. And we've totally lost sight of that. And no one will get behind term limits as part of their political platform when they run. And they would go so far. Campaign finance reform and term limits would go, you know, 90% of the way to fixing some of these issues.
I was just going to say, like, I would have said the exact same thing. There's 2 things that could fix almost everything. If politicians didn't have to raise money, and if politicians were completely limited to how long they could be there. And it's interesting because, like, state politicians are dudes that like come to legislate every so often, then they go back to their jobs, and then they come back, and then you go down to a local level. It really, like, I think national politics could learn a lot from local politics in a weird way, even though local politics aren't perfect. And also
depends what state you're in, man. California and local politics are awful too.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying, like, national politics, as much as it's the theater that we all watch and it's this massive soap opera, it's not really what affects most people's lives on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, I was just joking today on Twitter. So I live in Gainesville, Florida, obviously. I used to be a massive like Gator tailgater. We have like the first tent right on the Gator Walk in front of the stadium, this huge thing. So and I wouldn't have gone this year no matter what, but they banned tailgating. But the state allowed bars to open like 2 weeks ago, phase 3 or whatever. So literally everybody that doesn't care about COVID that would have gone to the stadium was in like a mile-long lines at the bars across the street from the stadium to get inside and crowd in as tight as they could to watch the game, right? So, but that's local politics, right? That has nothing to do with national politics, the policies. It's so conflicted, but like the city could have been like, hey, we're keeping bars closed.
Yeah. It's just like, it's basic. It seems so basic because it's like basic incentive alignment. So when you have a politician that is trying to have a career in politics, they make decisions that they otherwise wouldn't make based on that incentive. Like one of my best friends from college works for one of our sitting national, he's a congressman from California, and he's in DC. his first vote, when he got there, he wanted to vote no on this bill. And it was kind of a, middle of the road bill. He was going to vote no. He basically got a letter from one of the aides for Pelosi saying, you have to vote yes on this. Otherwise, basically, you're not going to get a bill passed. Your entire time in Congress, you will not get anything passed. We'll sandbag everything, whatever. And so when you have something like that, like you just, why am I voting for a politician? I'm voting for them because I agree with their values maybe and what they're going to stand for. And if they can't really stand for what they believe in because of the way things have molded in that direction, it's a little bit nuts, right? It totally breaks down the whole system. And now we just see the nth order effects of that as it plays and trickles through. Also just the whole thing of like, perfect is the enemy of good, right? We know that in business, that in life. When you're investing, that you're never going to have a perfect trade, just take profits. Like it applies to so many things. We all know it. But for some reason in politics, like right now, the stimulus bill is a perfect example to me. Like you have Republicans saying like 800 million is their cap, or 800 billion is their cap. Democrats saying they want 2.2 trillion. To me, I'm like, okay, business guy, that seems like there's a middle ground that works somewhere there around like a trillion or trillion two, right?
I've negotiated it in markets all over the world, and I know that you just split the difference.
Let's just get it done, and then we can figure out if we want to do more later. But like, get something out, get it done. Like, there's middle ground on that, but they don't. And it's the same thing with like climate change bills that they try to get passed. They're like, oh, we're not willing to do it unless it's the perfect bill, whatever it is. And it makes no sense. It's like, it defies the logic of all negotiating that you learn, negotiating with your wife, negotiating with your kids. I mean, It's like the most basic stuff. It doesn't make sense.
Well, perfection is also subjective.
Yeah.
So like, it's not even like you have a direct definition of what perfection is in any given situation. You just have each person's idea of what would be the perfect thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of two-party politics is compromise.
Should be.
I said idea.
Yeah. We need a viable third party. It's just, and I don't know if it's a real independent party or, more of a libertarian base, something just to disrupt the current two-party system and actually, create some form of government that works. Because right now, I don't know what it is. I mean, I watched the debate the other night, like most people, and yeah, I just felt sorry for our country in a lot of ways. Thinking back on like the debates I grew up with when I was a kid and getting excited about politics, and like, I don't know, watching like Bush and Gore back in 2000 or whatever it was, like when I was a kid, it just felt like there were real policy discussions and real plans put in place. And it was, you were sitting there and like really thinking about things while watching it. It's just sad what it's all come to.
And the whole world's watching that, which is just like,
yeah, if you're China or you're Russia, man, you're licking your chops probably watching that, right? Like this is our competition. This is the global hegemon that we grew up with. Like if I'm Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, I mean, I'm in an all-night strategy session figuring out like, okay, how do we capitalize on this if this is what we're gonna get?
And you talk about stimulus, and now the Senate is closed.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be really interesting when you have like some of these NFL games getting canceled, which is screwing my fantasy team, by the way, because I have James Conner and Juju.
I have Conner too.
Yeah.
You've got the NFL I have a million fantasy teams, but whatever.
Yeah. And now, with Congress, I don't know, hopefully it's not as bad as people think and it doesn't spread much further, and all these people are fine. I mean, I never wish ill upon anybody, regardless of politics, one way or another. So hopefully it all is okay, because I think it's bad for America. And I'm, at the end of the day, I'm an American, and that's what I want. So we'll see. It's going to be a crazy few weeks though, for sure. It does feel like the first time in a while that people have kind of gotten smacked in the face again with the realities of some of the stuff going on.
I wonder if they'll learn any lessons though. Like it's going to be interesting to see how public perception changes after seeing, this amount of people, like you said at the beginning, like there was kind of an idea, and that all of us maybe shared in, like, it's kind of cool to be outdoors.
Yeah. It was the first time since like April I bought puts. So I'm it might be a counter indicator and I'm gonna get blown up, but on like Wednesday, a day before all this came out, I had no idea obviously, but the day before all this came out, I bought puts, thought they were going to be hugely in the money on Friday after all this news, and the market was up. So go figure. But we'll see. It does feel like there's a lot of uncertainty and potential downside here.
Yeah, trying to play any news in this market is
impossible. That's why my highest conviction trade continues to be Bitcoin, and I just put in my daily buy and feel good about it for the next 5 or 10 years.
But you just touched on the most important part, which is the next 5 or 10 years, and not the next 5 or 10 days, 5 or 10 weeks, or even 5 or 10 months.
Yeah.
And I think in this market, most people are thinking on a much shorter time frame, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just too hard to predict. And we're in this like bizarro world, bad is good type thing right now too. So you also have to realize that, like, I could argue things are horrible for the economy that could happen in the next 2 weeks, but then you might say, oh, but that's just going to lead to Congress coming around on stimulus, and they're going to go pump a bunch of more money into the economy, which is good for the market. So I don't know. It cuts both ways. I have absolutely no clue where any of this is going to head.
Nobody does.
But I feel good about Bitcoin.
This is definitely the most interesting time. It's not a positive thing, but in the entire context of COVID and everything that's happened, like seeing now, a very clear, like, the leader of the free world has COVID, his wife has COVID. And then you can it's like you can visually contact trace a photo of all of them. So I'm just really curious as to if people will remain sort of cognitively dissonant, or if this will, this could perhaps, they all come out of it, people take it a bit more seriously, we move on, and or it could go completely the other way. I don't know. I mean, like some of these people, like Chris Christie is a morbidly obese human being. He did not want to get COVID.
He's definitely got some of the comorbidities there, man. I don't know. You've had Dr. Eric Ding on your show before, I think.
Twice.
So he's been pretty active talking about all this stuff. I don't know what to make any of it right now. So
I'm more concerned about the NFL.
Yeah, I am definitely more concerned about my fantasy team right now.
but yeah, beyond my fantasy team, which is my greatest concern, I'm sad to admit. What did they think was going to happen? Because
they didn't do the bubble thing. The bubble thing has been proven to work quite well, I will say. It's been amazing how the NBA, how the NHL, like it worked. It worked quite well. And even the MLB, man, the MLB held together really well too.
But the problem is, like, the football season's so short and each game is so important. Baseball, you can cancel 5 games and move on with your lives. And with football, it's like, first of all, like, do not expect 23-year-old rich single dudes to like go out and I'm not blaming them. I'm saying
what happened in baseball too. Yeah,
guaranteed.
Totally.
Like, it's a foregone conclusion.
And you need like you need like a kangaroo court on the team to police it in order for it to work. I mean, like in baseball, the teams were really the players on the teams were really policing it, from what I heard from my buddies that play. One of my best friends plays for the A's, and they had one outbreak during the year. One guy got it, and it was just like, it was a freak thing. Like his girlfriend had it or something, but he was living with his girlfriend. It wasn't, a big deal, but they just shut down for 5 days. They, had to basically like quarantine in a hotel room on the road. They said it was miserable, but they missed a few games, and then they just played a bunch of doubleheaders, and now they're in the playoffs. And
this isn't fun. I mean, this isn't fun for athletes, right? Now. This is not.
No, it's not fun for anyone, to be fair. At least they're getting to make some money and, play a sport for a living. But hey, let me ask you a question. Actually, this is total change of subject. Please. But when you recommend, so like I've been running into this huge issue around talking to people about investing in like what to invest in right now and how to create a portfolio. And, I always come back to dollar cost averaging. Like for most people, just like pick an allocation, dollar cost average into it. And right now, like I want people to have, Bitcoin in their portfolio. I would say, and this is my parents, this is young people, whatever. I think they should have Bitcoin in their portfolio, and I think they should have precious metals in their portfolio. Whether or not, I think it's like going to the moon, going up a little bit, whatever. I just think you need to have it in your portfolio, whether it's insurance or whether it's an investment for you. I haven't found like great places to dollar cost average into all of these things on kind of a low fee basis. Like what do you use? What are the best things like within the crypto space, for example, for dollar cost averaging, or what do you use for your broader portfolio around that?
It's hard on the broader portfolio. I mean, like my IRA, I've always had, well, I have a self-directed IRA, and then I have my wife's is on, I was on E-Trade forever before I got a self-directed IRA so that I could have Bitcoin, and that you can set an automatic buy. So I was just like anyone else, I was buying like a mutual fund and some SPY in my IRA, and those were automatic, like first of the month.
Yeah.
We have a Vanguard one, so that's just buying the same mutual fund every single month, same day of the month and whatever. But for precious metals and stuff, there's really no great way that I'm aware of that you can automatically do it. So it has to be sort of a manual thing. In Bitcoin, I think it's actually very easy. You can go on almost any of these exchanges. Voyager, I know Gemini has it. I believe Coinbase has it, where you can just you do it. I think so. But for a broader portfolio, it's not like, I mean, I think you can set on any of the major platforms. Like if there's a REIT you want to buy to be exposed to real estate or something, you can set an auto buy on a certain asset, but it's really not as crystal clear as you would think. Somebody should, and maybe this exists, but somebody should just create a whole bunch of like basket portfolios that include all of these things. Totally. I guess that's what some of these ETF funds are, but that you can, choose. Yeah. But like Vanguard's funds are interesting because like they're retirement age targeted or whatever. I would never put a whole ton of money in it, but for like one IRA that's $6,000 a year, where it's like, it reallocates and rebalances as you get older to reduce your exposure to riskier assets.
That's interesting. It's
they have a fund for every year. They have a new mutual fund for every single year based on when you'll turn 65.
I got to look at that.
Yeah. And so it's very heavy. The younger you are, the heavier it is in equities. And then it obviously, but like, do you even want
the problem is they're using like
bonds?
They're using like risk parity. Like who's buying, they're using like traditional risk parity models and saying you should be 60-40. And it's like that portfolio is dead, man. I don't know what wealth managers think about it. It's just like, come on. Like you have to go deeper than that. There's just no, people keep recommending M1 Finance to me. So I need to check that out. But I still don't like M1 Finance doesn't allow you to do crypto. So like if I'm trying to get my friends or my family into this stuff, they have to go open like 3 accounts to go, buy, whether it's physical bullion or some of the trust stuff on the precious metal side, to buy crypto, to buy, dollar cost averaging with Wealthfront or Betterment or M1, whatever it is. It's just surprising to me that
requires active management.
It's surprising to me that there's not one platform that allows you to do it all, especially with fractional trading that exists now. So this is just a funny story. Before I have to sign off so that my wife doesn't kill me here. So I was talking to a friend. He's a really, really thoughtful and smart growth investor, hedge fund guy, kind of like SaaS focused, brilliant, crushes it, manages a ton of money. I've been talking to him about Bitcoin, trying to get him educated on why I think it needs to be at least a piece of his portfolio and eventually of his institution's portfolio. He doesn't understand it. Super smart guy. And he texted me the other day asking like, hey man, can I buy a fractional Bitcoin or do I have to buy an entire one? And I like damn near lost my mind because I was just, and the first thing I did, I was joking about this with a few friends. The first thing I did was I went and doubled my daily dollar cost average on Bitcoin, the amount that I buy, because to me, I'm just like,
going to come in and buy a whole Bitcoin.
Well, it just screams information asymmetry to me. Like how many things are there out there where a really smart investor did not know that you can buy fraction, that Satoshis exist, like that you can buy fractional shares down to the nth degree. Like the fact that he didn't know that, eventually he will, and people like him will. And that's when you start having real dollars coming into the market. Like we are still, people talk about mainstream adoption. People talk about the information kind of getting out there and institutions starting to buy in. We are still so far away from like real money pouring into this at a broader level. Like what percent of the population really knows or understands it? It's got to be under 1% still, which is nuts. When you think about like we're sitting at 10,000 plus and no one really know, like in the grand scheme of things, if I go around and poll 10 of my friends, I bet maybe one of them would understand. And my friends are pretty educated about this stuff.
It's just not on people's radar still, as much as we being like, as much as we being completely immersed in it on a day-to-day basis think so. I agree with you. Maybe 1%.
Yeah. That, and it needs a stock split because I've had too many friends text me being like, oh, it feels expensive at, 10,000. And I'm just like, why? Like, you have no basis for that. Like there's absolutely no reason that it's expensive there. Like you're not doing fundamental analysis telling you that. You just think
if we want to kill it, we need Bitcoin to go bankrupt.
Yeah, that's true. Bankrupt and then SPAC it. Then we'll do a SPAC. Bitcoin SPAC. I'll do a Bitcoin SPAC 101. We can follow up on that. We'll go live next time to talk about it.
I like it. Well, if you got to go, man, no problem. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. All right, guys. Take care.
Have a good one. Good night. So everyone else, since I'm here alone, if you got any questions, anything you want me to talk about, feel free to drop it. I'll scroll back in the comments here. Let's see. Cantelon Effect, you guys. Yeah. Hey, what's up, people? Thanks for checking in. Any thoughts on the many accounts that have been compromised last week? Robinhood said that it would take weeks before it investigates fraudulent trade transfers. Isn't this mental harassment? Maybe, but it probably just might take that long actually for them to sort it out. Robinhood's a curious platform. I mean, it's become so famous because of Dave Portnoy and his army of traders and all that. But people forget that when the market was crashing in March, Robinhood went down for like 2 days and really destroyed a lot of people. There were people who wanted to get out of positions and couldn't. The market was completely dumping and they weren't even, it wasn't even possible for them to get out. I mean, that's a really big problem. It's kind of like crazy. That's a very crypto-esque sort of platform, but to have that in a legacy market and have that many people trading billions of dollars on there is really kind of scary. But I don't know what's going to pan out with those fraudulent trades and everything. I'm going to scroll down here. What's up, people? Yeah, you said, Joe right here says, my parents didn't realize you could buy a fractional amount of Bitcoin. It's kind of funny because in 2017, one of the huge reasons that people pointed to that, Litecoin went crazy was because Coinbase was the biggest exchange in the United States and people didn't think they could afford a whole Bitcoin. So they looked to the cheapest thing on the platform, which at that time was Litecoin. So they would buy a whole Litecoin as opposed to buying a whole Bitcoin, which pumped the price. And it really does show how little people understand this market, which is not their fault. I think it's all of our jobs to go out there and do a better job, of promoting and explaining and educating people on what it is. But yeah, I think most people think that you have to buy a whole Bitcoin, and there's very few who even understand what Bitcoin is in the first place. So when you buy anything for the long term, are 40% dips irrelevant to you, or do you sell in profit and rebuy? Example, buy Ethereum at 360, hold it even if it drops to 250. That's for Jake G. I think it depends on your mentality, whether you're an investor or a trader. 40% is a big dip, but it's not a big dip in context of the crypto market. If you believe that something is going to be, 5, 10, 20x long-term in the future, a 40% dip should not matter that much. In fact, as a dollar cost averager, you should look forward to those dips as an investor as an opportunity to buy and average down. But that's not an attitude that you should take as a trader at all. And that's a really important differentiation between investors and traders and what percentage you should be trading with and investing with. So I would say for me, I would hold it, because there's no more dangerous idea in trading than I'm going to sell now to buy lower, because buy lower may never come. And when it does come, you might be afraid to buy because you also think it's going to go lower. It's a huge part of investing psychology. And that's why for most people, investing should be basically automated. You should have a set plan, a set schedule, and it should be basically price agnostic, like dollar cost averaging. And you should just go ahead and let it happen and not even be checking the price enough to know, that it's doing one thing or the other. But selling to buy lower usually leads to selling to buy higher, unfortunately. So, Sam, you're awesome. Any thoughts on the QCoin exchange hack? My thoughts on it are that it sucks. I don't know if it will have any tremendous effect on the market, but it's obviously not good. I think that some projects have done very well to mitigate the downside of that. It just shows that, this market is in its infancy. The structure is in its infancy. It's generally unregulated, and this stuff is going to continue to happen. I think it's much better now than it was in, 2014, 15, 16, 17, for sure. But, I think that if there was going to be a major downside effect from the QCoin exchange hack, we would have already seen that playing out. And it seems like, the worst of it is probably over, whatever that was. Next question is, are you more bullish on Bitcoin or Ethereum? I would say both, but I'm certainly not a maximalist. I think they both have their use case. I, earlier this year, very vocally switched my dollar cost averaging strategy largely from Bitcoin to Ethereum because I thought the market was ready to do well. And I thought that, Ethereum tends to disproportionately go up or down. So it can be more bullish or more bearish depending on what the market looks like. So in a good market, I generally assume that Ethereum is going to do better. And I thought that in advance of the DeFi craze, which I had no idea was going to happen. And that, was not even a part of my consideration. And then obviously Ethereum now has a very legitimate use case. I mean, every time someone wants to do a trade on Uniswap, they need gas, they need Ethereum. So, people have to buy Ethereum. You have to be bullish on it for that reason, right? Unless you think DeFi is going somewhere as a complete flash in the pan, which I don't. I think a lot of these projects will probably be called out over time, but in general, I don't think it's going anywhere. And that's, for now, is very much based in Ethereum. There will be competitors. There's a lot of amazing products that don't use Ethereum, but it's the big daddy in the DeFi space. And I was bullish on it even before that. So let me see. Does it make you nervous that coins like Ocean paused and forked so quickly? Do you see that happening at a national government order in the future, potentially? Sorry, Joe, man, that one's a bit above my head. I don't really follow Ocean, so I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Worst comes to worst, if President Trump dies or U.S. election gets postponed, how do you think it will impact the market? I don't think he's going to die. And I don't think the election will get postponed. But, we can just talk about, in general, markets hate uncertainty. That's a known fact for all of time. It's a famous quote. So I would say that we can expect a lot of volatility and uncertainty in the markets. That can be up and down on any given day. But in theory, if there's uncertainty, we should see a bit of downside. Historically, October on an election year has been down more often than it's been up, mostly just because the market is somewhat holding its breath and waiting to see what's going to happen, in the election, which makes sense because you don't know which party is going to win. You don't know how that'll affect the market. So maybe people sell and exit the market for a while, sit on the sidelines and wait till they have more clarity. Let's see. Good evening from New Jersey. What's up? Scott, I'm only just over a month into crypto space and I can't believe how much has been going on. When did you start and how did you learn and embrace all this? I started in late 2016, kind of into early 2017. It was really like probably April, May 2017 that I started sort of trading aggressively. And it's nuts at first, completely. Like I'm like the classic case of all the crazy things that you hear about getting into crypto, right? At first, I never bothered to check even though I moved money to Bittrex and I didn't even understand I was trading in Bitcoin, they didn't have USD pairs, but I still only checked my portfolio in USD and I'd be like, oh, I'm even or I'm slightly up. And I didn't realize that I was just hemorrhaging Bitcoin, right? So eventually I learned that it mattered about trading the Bitcoin pair, that you needed to check your Bitcoin balance to see how well you were doing. So, there's just a lot going on. I would say, you're not asking for advice necessarily, but you need to just move slowly, focus on a few assets, learn how they move, trade those assets, and don't try to focus on everything. And I will say that right now is the craziest I think it's ever been, because there's 10 DeFi Uniswap coins that don't need an exchange. They can just trade on Uniswap launching every single day, right? So, I mean, it's nearly impossible. You couldn't keep up with them. I'm all over this market, and I have literally no idea what's happening with half these coins. There are just too many to track, and I'm not going to bother to even try to track them all. It's literally impossible. Apparently Sahil was someone's baseball coach. That's awesome. Do you believe, like others, that Bitcoin will range the rest of the year between 10K and 11K, or will we have a nice Q4? That's actually the last question. So if anyone else has more questions, feel free to ask them, because if you don't, I'll probably sign off after this one. I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the year, and I actually kind of don't care. I know that sounds weird, but I've been very vocal for a very long time that I don't really concern myself with long-term future predictions or future predictions at all. Because as an investor, I don't care what happens the rest of this year. I don't even care what happens next year. I don't care what happens in 3 years. I care what happens in 10, 20, 30 years. So my investing strategy is going to remain the same, with only small tweaks for a very, very long time. So I'm indifferent to price action for the next few months, or the next quarter, or whatever. It could range between 10 and 11. I mean, as a trader, I care, but as a trader, I just play everything level to level. So like, I draw my lines, I figure out the areas that I think are, important, and I just reassess when it hits one of those areas. My alarm's on. If I have a trade open, I know it hits that area. I take some profit if it's on the way up, and then maybe I take all of it. And then if it flips that area, I buy again in the same area when it, flips resistance to support. So I don't think you need to really make guesses or predictions as to what will happen in the next 3 months, what will happen in the next year. It's fun. Like, it's a bit of a meme. It's great for engagement if you're on Twitter, but it doesn't matter at all, because most of my money is an investment, right? And most of my money, I'm blindly investing, not thinking about the price, and I'm willing to hold it for a decade. So it's just not that important to me. Any good book recommendations? I wish I had any, but I don't really read trading books, to be honest. It's not my thing. I feel like I've got my own sort of rhythm and vibe the way I trade, and I don't really, listen, I love reading. I read all the time, just not necessarily about trading. I feel like I needed to use books to escape from trading and thinking about markets and stuff. So I haven't really dug deeply into that in a long time. Do you think the dollar will be devalued soon? And do you think it will affect the crypto market? That's such an interesting question that I'm going to actually pull a chart for you. So let me see what we got here. Trading view. I'm going to have to do a screen share in a second to answer that question. So bear with me. See what we got here. I have an alert. I have alerts going off. That's interesting. Let me see. This is opening a uni chart, which my alert went off breaking this line, but it never broke, got rejected. But what I want to show you is the dollar, since we're talking about a dollar devaluation. And I've talked about this on recent streams. We're going to open both of these. Right. I haven't actually checked DXY in a couple of days, probably since yesterday, actually, whenever I did my stream. But so here was the daily. I had drawn the squiggly line here that's now gone, but it showed literally that we would hit this, drop here, and potentially come down. So yes, I do think there's a devaluation happening, but it's important to open, I think, the monthly chart for this. Right, this channel has existed for over a decade. This is the Great Recession right here. Dollar dumping and then slowly strengthening over time. And here we are, a breakdown of this very clear confirmed support. Below, retest as resistance. So my expectation, and listen, caveat, charts don't tell you the future. It's just an idea. It's what could happen. This could go like this and destroy markets, because if the dollar goes up, everything else goes down. We should all know that by now. If dollar goes down, everything else goes up. But, you know, this was kind of what I was expecting. So we got let me scoot that over, right? We got the retest, boom, boom, and down. And this shouldn't, like, if this plays out as the chart says, there should not be a small downtrend. We should be returning down to these levels eventually. It should be a very long and sustained drop in the dollar, because we're talking about a 10-year channel here that's been, you know, broken down and tested as resistance. So yes, I do think that we will see a devaluation of the dollar. And that's because the technical analysis lines up with the idea that the administration wants the market to go up, right? Number only go up, stocks only go up. Well, if stocks go up, the dollar is generally going down. It's just the way it works. So yes, I think that we will probably see a devaluation of the dollar. I mean, in these wars, with currency wars with other countries like China, you know, everyone's trying to devalue their currency. It's insanity, but it's the reality of what we have. So, oh, guys, I've been talking this whole time and you can't see the chart. Okay, let me try that again. What noob. All right, 1 second. Try this again. Can you see the chart now, by the way? I drew all kinds of stuff on there before. So sorry about that. But this was the idea, that we've broken down this channel and we're going to go down. It's literally that simple, right? This is a huge month of doing that and drop. So makes sense. Sorry about that. I'm still pretty new to this. I'm going to scroll back up and see what I missed. Is XRP the future of transactions? I don't know. I can't answer that. I just know that it's largely disappointing more often than not. Oh, just really quick, back to the dollar question. Its effect on Bitcoin was part of the question, and so I didn't get to that. But here's a chart of Bitcoin versus the dollar. You can very easily see that they're inversely correlated. Huge up, huge down. Here, big gap in the action, big gap in the action, huge gap in the action. This goes up, you know what I mean? Like it's just very, very obvious that the two have at least some sort of inverse relationship. So hard to argue with that. So if the dollar continues down, in theory, we should see Bitcoin absolutely rage, right? So that's a good thing. So for Bitcoin, not for the world necessarily. So I'm talking about Uni XRP. I mean, I think you can be bullish on XRP for being adopted, but that doesn't mean that the price of XRP is going to go up. There's a big difference between Ripple succeeding and XRP succeeding. And like I said, every time XRP goes up, you seem to see these huge inflows to exchanges and people dumping. I just think that it's much harder to move these older coins because there's huge bag holders who are looking to sell on any time it goes up. That's why the newer coins move with such less friction. Let me look at this. Intelligent Investor is a great book to read. That's true. Is your plan to eventually relocate to your land, or did you buy it just for an investment? It's a bit of both, Ronan. Nice to see you here, buddy. I always have a great conversation with you on Twitter. We bought it as sort of a savings account, but it is very likely that we will end up building on it in the coming years. And, you know, we would sell this house and probably buy another piece of land as an investment. But I believe that you should definitely own real estate and own land, even if it goes down in price. It's a hard asset, much like gold or Bitcoin or any of those, you know, and it's not inflationary. Like I'd much rather have a piece of land. And again, this is money you have. If you're going to buy land, it has to be money that you don't need. You know, you still have to be liquid for emergencies and you have to have dollars. But, you know, I think that you should have as few dollars as possible after your emergency fund of 6 to 12 months is full, because dollars are losing value against everything else all the time. That's how the dollar is structured. That's how the dollar is made. That's what the dollar is, you know? And so, you know, I'm buying land because I can afford to buy land and I'll figure out what to do with it later. I just know that it won't lose value as fast as the dollar. Even if I get stuck with it for a while, it'll eventually come back. So recently, Bitcoin and stocks have been correlated. When do you see the two becoming uncorrelated again? Glenn, that's a good question, because I don't think that they're correlated. Mathematically, correlation is Markowitz portfolio theory, and to scale of -1 to 1. The highest they ever got was 0.5 or 0.6 ish, depending on who you're talking to, and that's moderate correlation. So they were never fully correlated, and moderate still is not enough to trade based on that information. So I think, as I just touched on, the real story is not the correlation between Bitcoin and stocks. It's the inverse correlation between the dollar and basically everything else, right? We see this somewhat correlation between gold and silver and the dollar, and all stocks, equities, and Bitcoin, because they're all beholden to what the dollar decides to do at any given moment, basically, which is unfortunate, but true. So I don't really think that Bitcoin and stocks have been tremendously correlated in my mind. And it touches on an interesting point, because even if they are correlated, what does that mean for you as a trader or an investor? What are you going to do with that information? Right? I always talk about this. Like, I can look at the Bitcoin chart and trade the Bitcoin chart profitably, and I have for years. So what information does the stock market give me? Because if they're directly correlated, it's not like one's moving ahead of the other one. So yeah, I guess you could look at the SPY chart or SPX chart if you believe that, but it should, if they're correlated, show you the exact same thing you're seeing on the Bitcoin chart. And therefore, it's not giving you any more information to process. In fact, if it does, it might confuse you slightly. So I still believe that you get enough information from studying a single asset to trade it, then you don't really need the context if you're a technical trader, so that's really my approach. I don't know if you guys have any more questions. I'll wait around for another second or two, but it is getting a bit later here on a Saturday night. I should probably pretend that I have a life outside of you guys. Well, I think that's about it, guys. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Appreciate you all hanging in there with me. I appreciate Sahil Bloom. If you guys caught that at the beginning, dude is just a beast. Follow him at Sahil Bloom on Twitter. He's the single best person I know at making complex financial topics seem extremely, extremely simple. He's a literal must follow on Twitter. And, you can follow me, obviously, at Scott Melker. And you can find everything else I'm doing at the wolfofallstreets.io. So I intend to do this much, much more often. And hopefully we'll be hanging out live very often. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And now I'm going to sit here awkwardly, because last time I cut it off and it cut off all of my talking. So I have to wait like 30 seconds and then end the stream, apparently. So peace, guys. Thank you. Cheers.